Hello, everybody. How are you? Phew. Running a bit late today. I had some appointments and stopped for groceries and just got home. So I unpacked the stuff that had to go in the fridge and then rushed down here to be with you. So hello, it's lovely to see you. I'm a little warm. Hi, I'm Cheryl Larkson, your host for the Quilters Playcation Adventures Sewalong Rainbow Edition for 2024. This is week 33. Not, as I said last week was week 33. This is week 33. I was corrected. And I double checked before I started today. So we are here today to talk about rainbows and improv piecing and whatever else comes across our mind. Likely whatever comes across my mind, because if you've been here before, you know I can babble with the rest of it. Terry says, breathe and let's have fun. Breathing has been a challenge. I'm just getting over a cold. It's a cold as far as I know. I didn't test or anything, and nobody else in the house seems to be getting it, so that's good. But yeah, I was down for the weekend and I'm just kind of slowly emerging out. And then, you know, good old perimenopause and the irregular periods. So today's a great day, but on the plus side, I don't have varicose veins. So I just got back from that doctor's appointment. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. We'll take what we can. In the meantime, we're going to make a pinwheel rainbow today. We've got two different versions going on. So I don't actually have a finished block to show you yet because I want to show you how to do both versions. And I need to have them in progress for that. I didn't want to make an extra block there. And then remind me when we finish, I have some amazing news when we finish, but I'm going to save it till the end. All right. So let's come over here. Let us turn this around and say hello to the ladies for today. Hello, hello, hello. And head down to the cutting table so that we can see what's going on today. So what I wanted to do today is a 4-patch pinwheel. Pretty straightforward, right? Typical pinwheel is 4 half square triangles, sew them together like a 4-patch, done, right? So here are the first 2 blocks that I did in my monochromatic rainbow. I'm just going to pull them up there. So what we've done is that the rainbow is one of the half square triangles, and then our background fabric is the other part of the half square triangle. So what we need to do is make these strip sets. And there's 2 different ways to do it. So, Gail, nice to see you. It's the first time you've been able to catch me live. Well, welcome. You get my ramblings live. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us today. So as I was saying, we need to make these strip sets, but I want to clarify a couple of things. If we think about how we typically make a half square triangle, how most of us, not everybody, but most of us makes our half square triangles this way. We pair two squares together, and we draw a line, and then we sew on either side of the line and we cut them apart. If we do that with a strip set, like I have here, like a typical rainbow strip set, if we do that, what ends up happening is that we actually have opposite strip sets. So you'll have a lot of pink on one and then almost no pink on the other, and vice versa. It is not a big deal. I've done one version that way, but if you want a version where you have the rainbow kind of coming out here, right? Like Sleeping Dog Quilts mentioned, the sense of depth in the black and white blocks, that's achieved by containing that rainbow in the same order. So basically what I want to talk about is that there's 2 different ways to make the strip sets. Okay, so let's go the first way, the conventional way, which is our typical kind of rainbow here, right? Oh, Killyfesh says it's hot in Florida. We are thankfully not as hot as we have been, but it is quite a warm day today too, but probably nowhere near you. So I hope you're inside enjoying air conditioning in there. So we need a strip set of our block. Now, I initially went into my scraps and thought, okay, I'm going to make a strip set from there. But I didn't have any long enough pieces because my thought was, well, if I'm going to do a single rainbow and cut my squares out of this to use for my half square triangles, I need longer, right? So how much longer do we need? So here's a little bit of math for you. And you know what? I'm going to grab my little whiteboard to go over the math with you real quick. There's the black pen. Okay, so for my pastel blocks, I have 10.5 inch unfinished, right? That's what I square up to. If I need to turn this into 4 quarters, meaning I'm going to have the 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 of my pinwheel block there. I need to make each one of these half of this plus seam allowance. So to make it really easy, I actually like to add the seam allowance first. So I make that 11. And then I know that these need to be 5.5 when all is said and done. Because if I sew 2 5.5s together, that will give me 10.5 in width and then the same in height. So I need to add to that. If I want to have a 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch square, right? Those are inches. For a half square triangle to finish, then I need to, if I'm turning it into a final half square, that's the size I need for the HST. So what I need to sew those together is I need 6 inch squares to be my pair that I sew together that then gets cut apart, right? So what do I need to make that? I need bigger strip sets. So I actually started with 6.5 inch squares, which meant in a strip set, I needed a 13.5 inch by 6.5 inch strip set. All that to say is if you need 5.5, make your strips go 1 inch longer, so 6.5, and times it by 2. So your height will be the whatever size you need. So if you do 9.5, right? If yours is a 9.5, then you're going to need a 5 inch square. So then you're going to cut a 6 inch, 1 inch bigger, and then that's going to be a 12 by 6 inch strip set. So just remember, add 1, double it. That gives you the length and the height of the strip set that you're roughly going to need. This is improv, so it doesn't have to be super exact until you want it to be super exact. And then sometimes, because I'm just going to show you this, you make your strip set and you're so focused on the length of it that you don't pay attention to the height. And I wasn't quite high enough with my rainbow strip set. So I could have, easy fixes, swapped out one of these, right? Undid some sewing, put in a bigger strip or 2. I could have just added another strip of pink or another strip of purple on the end, but I decided to go ahead and add a strip of the background there. Just for fun. I like the wonkiness that it's going to give the final blocks. So I cut out 2 of my, let's double check what I cut out here, 6.5 inch squares, right? And then I am going to sew them together like typical half square triangles, right? You can play around with, is it going to be on that angle or that angle? It really kind of doesn't matter because you're going to get more or less the same thing either way. So just pick and go from there. So I've got a long ruler. I do like to draw the line. I will not draw it with my dry erase marker though. I'll draw it with this. Right, so I'm just drawing a line. This is not a sewing line. This is a reference line, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side to make our half square triangles. This is why we need to make ones bigger, because they will shrink up to get us to the size that we want. So just make sure you're lined up, right? Edges to edges. This is some precision sewing. Our improv came in getting that strip set together, but it's a strip set, so I didn't show you how to sew the strip set together for this one. For the second version, I will show you what I did a little bit more. I've already got them sewn together, but I'm going to show you what I did. So I've sewn down 1/2, you can see. Now I'm going to sew down the other half. Okay, pretty straightforward, right? Standard half square triangle operating procedure. The only difference being that we are using a strip set for one of our fabrics versus a solid fabric. So I cut a line now where I had stitched, and I have 2 half square triangles. But what you'll see, and I'm just going to show you with the pressed ones, right, is they're different. Right, if I lay them with that background piece, right, I've got a tiny little bit of pink here. It's almost disappearing all the way through to an extra background piece, and it's the opposite on this one. And then I'm going to have a coordinating set here. So let's press those. In this case, I am pressing towards the background piece just because there's no seam allowances there. So this will allow the block to lay as flat as possible when everything comes together at the end. Okay. So those were the first 2 that I did, and these are the second ones. So our pinwheel is going to look kind of however we want it to look. I need to square these ones up. I'm just not going to do them right now. Right? I can play around, whoops, with how that pinwheel comes together. And it's going to have some really kind of interesting, you know, movement because of these extra little background pieces. But it is kind of your basic sort of pinwheel block there. Does that make sense to everybody? So we're essentially making 4 half square triangles, right? 2 sets that we make together. The difference is that we are using a strip set for one of our bits of fabric, and you can make that strip set long and then cut it down into a square. You could use scraps and just get it to what you need it to be. Don't be afraid if, like on this one here, right, it wasn't quite wide enough. Just add a little bit of background, add another one of your fabrics, have some fun with that, playing around. And then we can go ahead and sew that together. I'm just going to hold off on that for a moment because I want to show you the black and white version, right? In contrast to this one where we have, right, a strip set that varies as we go, meaning the order of the rainbow is different here than here because we just used one big long strip set as a single fabric. On this one, I wanted it to go from kind of light to dark the whole way. I can't achieve that by using a square strip set as my one fabric for the half square triangle. I have to do something a little bit different. So what do you have to do to create this? You need to make the individual strip set for each one of these triangles. How do you do that? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You kind of make a staggered strip set. So you're going to pick whatever's the inside is going to be the smallest piece, and you're going to get a little bit longer each time, right? So I did that. I've got 2 sets here. You're going to make those a little bit, so they're all going to be the same. You want them kind of all lined up roughly on one side the same, and then getting longer. How long do you need them to be? Same thing. We've got to think about what size does this need to be at the end. So in my case, I will be squaring, these got squared up to 5 inches, because then when they get sewn together, that will equal 9.5 inches. So I want to give myself kind of at least an extra 1/2 inch in width this way, so that when I sew them to a triangle, I have that wiggle room for squaring them up to get them to 5 inches. How big should the bottom be? Give yourself at least an inch, only so that you don't like just trim off and have absolutely no white there at the bottom, right? You can see that when you make it with the strip set, that pink has virtually disappeared and will mostly disappear in the seam allowance. So I'm going to have just a tiny little bit of the pink on that one, and a tiny little bit of the background on that one. That is the limitation when you do the strip set as individuals, beyond the fact that they're different, right? So I just gave myself a little bit more wiggle room on there. And so otherwise you're just sewing the strip sets together like you would all the other times. It's just that I kind of went individually. So I went through my scrap bin, found scraps, varying widths. Same thing for height. I'm a little worried this one's a bit short. It might be, I'm like 5, but it's shorter over here. So I've got a little bit. If I have to add a little piece afterwards, I'm going to go with that. But otherwise, I'm just going to try it in there. So those are your 2 options for your strip sets. If you want it the same as the rainbow, the rainbow always kind of from the inside out, then you're going to make 4 strip sets like this. If you don't care about the changes like I did on my pastel one, then you're going to make strip set squares, or a longer strip set that you cut into squares and make conventional half square triangles that way. So now how do we turn these into the half square triangles? Well, normally whatever we're using as that second fabric, or in my case the background fabric, I wouldn't recommend cutting this before we do things, but I am here just because it's going to be a little bit easier to eyeball things. You're just going to have to be careful, because that is a very stretchy cut piece right now. It's at the end of the world. See, that happened. I'm not going to reef on this to cut it apart, that tiny little thread that stayed together. I'm going to go back and I'm going to cut it just to minimize handling and stretching that fabric. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to line it up right on my strip set that I cut. Now you can see I'm going to have a lot of extra room. I'm moving this over to the edge here as far as I can, but I don't want to cover over. Like, I don't want to move it like this and have kind of this divot, because then there's not going to be anything sewn behind it, and it won't really be stable. So I need to always make sure I'm kind of covering these corners and just have some wiggle room. So that's how I'm going to sew the one. You can trim this excess fabric, you can trim this off before or after you sew. That's entirely maker's choice, depending on your machine setup as well. And then let's get this one set up. So I can again play around with where that goes. I've covered up all my corners, and you know, I'm kind of got a little bit of extra on that, so we'll see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these before I trim them. If you have a machine where your presser foot has that little kind of metal side bit that's a guide. You're obviously going to have to trim this before you sew. Okay, so I do want to trim these before I press. Just at some point you got to trim them, so it's really kind of whatever feels the most rhythmic for you in terms of, you know, okay, depending on your sewing machine setup or anything like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press these. It's pretty straightforward pressing, just pressing them flat to set the seam and then press towards the background. I've decided on this particular block, I'm going to skip that blue. I don't want to have blue on every one in the row just yet. It's coming, but not yet. So there I have my 2 blocks for squaring up. So let's go ahead and square them up. You have choices as well when you square them up. If you have excess fabric, right, you made them just that, you know, not just a little bit big, but, you know, a fair amount bigger, or you've got some wiggle room with what it. So I need 5 inches, right? Is that what I cut? So those 2, yes, cut those to 5 inches. You can do a couple of things. You can use a block lock ruler. I don't have any, but those are the ones that have like a little ridge here or a cutout. I can't remember how it works, so that it pokes against that seam, holds it in place, and then you line it up real nicely. You can use the line as I'm going to on the ruler, or you could ignore it entirely and make this a little bit wonky, right? Have a little bit of fun, not necessarily, you're still going to be squaring up the outside edges to the size that you need, but you're not necessarily worried about whether this is exactly kind of 5 inches or exactly a 45-degree there. You know what? I am going to go a little bit wonky, because why not? I am going to make sure that this bottom corner, because that's the one where they all meet, is at that 5-inch mark, but otherwise I'm just making this a little bit wonky. Why not, right? And I had plenty of fabric because I made it just a little bit big. It's always better to trim off than add. But is it a big deal if you have to add? No, you just, you know, throw in a fun little color, a little bit of something else, or one of your fabrics, and have fun with it. So there's that. That wonkiness is going to be pretty subtle, let's be honest. But it'll still be fun, I think. I'm going to make this one even wonkier because I can. There we go. This one you'll really kind of see the wonkiness, I think, a lot more. So there we go. I'm going to swap that up there. So my wonky ones are kind of opposite each other. See, there's our pinwheel. Oh, this one looks really strong. I think this was definitely the right choice to have the rainbow going out with particularly my monochromatic version, because this background fabric is so bossy. This provides quite a bit of order to it. So now we're going to assemble it standard 4-patch. I'll put those right sides together and those right sides together, sew down, chain stitch, sew down, press, and assemble. Okay, just make sure you don't rotate those as you move them into your hands. Okay, so I have them chain stitched like that. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to press them, and I'm going to press them in opposite directions. So this one is going to be pressed that way, and this one's going to be pressed that way. The easiest way to remember that, press to where there are the least amount of seam allowances. So I'm going to be pressing towards the background fabrics. And doing so this way when you make a 4-patch means that when you put those two halves together, the top and the bottom together, what you're going to get is a nicely nested seam. And that's going to help your block lay flat, which is important when you have a lot of bulk. Right, so I have them pressed. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew them together here. Now you may be more comfortable pinning, so I just want to show you that nested seam, right? I want to line those up, and you can feel it with your fingers. When it's not nested, right? It's not nested right now. It's quite bulky in there. And then when you move it over and get it nested, you can feel that. It feels nice. If you need, put a pin there. I typically just kind of hold it when it's one block at a time. So I'm going to go into the machine like this, keep holding it here until I get down to that part. So I'm going to finish up that one. Now, when I make 4 patches like this, I typically now will press this seam open. So I like to clip this little bit where that loop from chain piecing, I'll just trim that off, and then I'm going to go to the iron and I'm going to press that open. Lots of people like to twirl that seam when they go to do it. In all honesty, I always forget how to do the twirl because I don't do it that often. I do it if there's times where I'm like, yeah, I need to do the twirl, but I always forget exactly how to do it. It involves a little bit of unpicking. So I typically just press the seam open from the front or from the back, like I'm doing here. I like my seam, and then I'm going to press it from the front as well. And there is the rainbow block for this week. We've got ourselves a pinwheel rainbow. I'm just going to show you what the other one, I won't sew the other one together, but I'm going to show you what we're looking like. So double check my size. Now I've gone, yeah, that's what I thought. These felt a little bit big. So I've actually ended up cutting these a little bit big. So I'm going to trim those down, and I'll square up the other ones here. And then I want to kind of keep as much of that little bit there. I don't want to have it disappear. Oh, but my pink is going to be disappearing. I may end up redoing this one. It feels like it's just not come together exactly the way, but I'm okay with that. I just also, my brain is, you know, sometimes when you feel like your brain's not working. Yeah, when I sew that together, that'll be 10.5 inches. So 5.5 inches. So I'm going to lose the pink on this side. I don't love that, but what I'm going to do is here where I have pink, I'm going to make sure that that gets squared up to maximize the pink, which means I'm going to lose that little bit of background there. That's all right. Right? It's wonky. We're doing improv. It can be fun and have those variations. Sometimes those variations are exactly what make it the most interesting. Right, so this one might be nice over here. And then we'll square up this last one. Again, let's see, I want 5.5. I'm going to kind of cut the difference. I'll have the tiny, no, I won't even, I'm going to go for it again. I'm going to lose my pink in the corner down here and aim for more of that background. Alrighty. So this one's going to be pretty wonky, and I kind of like it, right? Two very different looks, as we've been doing all along, couple variations, just showing you how you can play around with this. And I mean, I could play further. I could go ahead and, could I do that? No, I would have to change. I was going to say I could rotate that around, but then my pinwheel wouldn't be in the right direction. Right, you can have lots of fun with how these things go. So when we're done, I will sew that together. You don't need to watch me sewing it together. So let's come back up. Yeah, Gail says that she likes the white background on there, gives it some movement. It really does, right? So this is a good example of, pardon me, I think I'm having a hot flash. Good example of like, it didn't work the way you thought it was going to work the first time, but you get creative in your solution and you come up with something really interesting. So go with it, right? Don't get upset that it didn't go how you thought it should the very first time. You can go ahead and play and explore and come up with those solutions. I've often said that to students in person who are trying improv for the first time, is that if it's not working or you don't feel comfortable and it's really hard, like this is a really challenging to your brain and body kind of experience, don't worry about it, right? It doesn't mean you, just because you tried improv doesn't mean you have to do it forever and ever and ever. But what it does is there is something that changes, that allows you to come up with those creative solutions and not be stressed about them. Running out of background fabric, running out of one of the main fabrics. There's a part of you that goes, oh, I can figure out a solution to this because I am creative and I can improvise a solution. So even if doing all the wonky stuff is not for you, improv is still a valuable skill because it allows you to problem solve creatively that way. So folks, that is it for week 33. My new glasses, by the way, they look pretty similar to my old ones. Same shape, just some funky colors. I needed stronger glasses. It was time. Yeah, that's week 33. Can you believe it? And now for the really exciting news. We passed our occupancy inspection today. I can move into the studio. Isn't that exciting? I'm so excited. I can tell you this, my daughter is way more excited than I am. She's like, when are you moving? When are you moving? When are you moving? When are you moving? Because she really wants this room. She has been sharing a room with her sister for her entire life. I would really like to have her own room. They're 16 and 18 and it's just time. It's just time. So we passed the inspection today, which means I can get the go ahead to start moving stuff. Let me show you. It's chaos in here. It is. This is very messy for me. I am normally not like this. I prefer not to be like this, let's just say. Chaos. And so I haven't been motivated to clean it up terribly because it would just end up still being piles, just more organized piles, because things have moved in here that need to go to the studio from other places in the house, hence a lot of the bigger piles. So now I know I can start organizing and cleaning, and maybe every time I go to work, take a box or two so it's not this giant move. I've made a list for some things at IKEA that I need. I'm really disappointed because the bookshelf that I wanted is discontinued and they have no more in stock. So I'm waiting to see what the new catalog brings out. But what this means is that probably not next week, but maybe the week after, I will be coming to you from the studio, complete with my yellow floors and different light and all the rest of it in there. And it means I can start planning for live events there. So I have some really interesting retreat ideas, some play dates that are going live. So make sure you are subscribed to both of my newsletters, because this is where the information will be coming. So that's at CherylArkison.com. You can, a pop-up will come up asking you to subscribe, and on Quilters Playcation website, get the scoop, sign up for the newsletter so you get all the latest information. Of course, I will update you here. Love my Quilters Playcation folks here for the Sewalongs. You will get updates here, but you will also get them probably first on that. Although this is breaking news for you, just for you in all of that. So on that note, I'm going to go. I need a drink of water, which I'm going to take right now because I do think this is a hot flash. I wasn't getting them during the day, but yay. And did you know there's a worldwide estrogen shortage? So I can't get the estrogen patch because nobody has it. Digression. Yeah, so we're going to go with that. This is me, Cheryl Arkison, your host on week 33 of the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong Rainbow Edition. Remember to use hashtags Quilters Playcation, QP Adventure Sewalong, or QP Adventure Sewalong 2024 if you're posting your blocks or projects or anything that you're doing related to the Quilters Playcation. If you post those on Instagram, I would love to see them. Feel free to tag me in them as well. Sign up for the newsletters, check out the blogs. Keep hanging out with me here on Instagram. It's been lovely to spend the time with you this week. Have a great week. Stay cool. Find those fans and those air conditionings if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, stay warm. And we will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.